Welcome back, listeners. Thank you for sharing some of your time with us. This is the Workplace Chameleon. I'm Dr. Selena, and if you are new, we are very glad you're here. If you've been along with us since our launch in early January, thank you for sticking with us on this journey. So, who is us? I've used that phrase, me, we, us. This is a team effort. And while I have been very fortunate to have worked for some passionate entrepreneurs in my life, I never really understood what it took to open your own business, if you will, and build that. So we're at about year 12 with some ups and some downs, but it has definitely been a group effort. Not only team members here, who I'll introduce to you in just a moment, but my family as well, to be able to journey with us on this, the ups and the downs, the hours, all of those things that small business owners or any owner who is responsible for delivery of commitments, both to employees and to customers. So it has been an interesting, winding journey. And it is that small but mighty team that I want to celebrate a little bit today. And if you'd like to learn more about our work and the team that is on with us, please feel free to visit pearmangroup.com. For that address, it'll be located in the show notes as well as the transcript. A shout out to Tony and Cindy and Nasha, who are currently on with us, and others who have helped along the way too. And one of the people who has been a central part of this team, someone who's become a valued colleague, sounding board, many times our calm in what can be my chaos. Someone who has challenged me in some very good ways when we talk about organizations and what drives companies today and how do we take care of the people part and support them on their way through whatever their work life looks like. That person for me has been Mel Gonnerman. And today, Dr. Mel Gonnerman joins me as co-host. He has been on with our team now for a number of years and now in the role as a leadership and organizational development consultant. And we love spending time with him anytime we can. Mel, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here with you and listeners today to talk about learning in organizations.
Yeah. So could you tell us a little bit more about you and your work and what you're passionate about when it comes to this professional life of ours?
Yeah, so I think to kind of frame things up, my personal mission statement is to share insights and encouragement with people to help them thrive, lead, and succeed while bringing out the greatness in themselves and others. And so that mission statement is kind of the thing that no matter what I'm doing in an organization or in my personal life, that kind of centers me in terms of how I approach things. And to kind of get to that place of having that mission statement, a little bit of background in terms of my education and work history. Won't go through every little step along the journey with people, but just in terms of some context, my background, a PhD, is in psychology. And so I studied in a program that was social and industrial organizational psychology program. And then my initial kind of step in the career was to be a faculty member at a university in the psychology department. I was there for a number of years, also worked at a research center. And then after academics for a while, I decided it was time to go to the private sector. So I spent a little time in the private sector after that. And that's part of the journey where we cross paths. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
we know that. And more recently, for the last couple of years, I have been teaching in the business department at a smaller liberal arts college, and then working in this consulting role here, helping out with organizations in our own backyard, as you like to say.
We love it. Yes, I do say that, we've just got some really neat companies doing some great things, taking good care of people. And you and I have ventured into a number of those over the years. And it's one of the things I've really learned from you, Mel, and have just grown to appreciate. how you live that mission statement. And for our listeners, as he shares that, that's not a light statement for him. This is something I've really come to appreciate about Mel and how he lives those very values. And he is also one of the people, and I say this with all the seriousness and all the humor I can muster with it, who asks the best questions. We could be sitting with a company in a conference room or on a production floor or wherever we were out, and you think up questions to ask people that I'm like, yeah, that hadn't even just crossed my mind. It's just not even there. So it's a skill Mel has had, and I think it's been part of what I've seen you do as part of you extend that value to others of how you support and encourage them and ask them great questions that not only helps certainly get you information and insight to how to best support them, but always gives them something to reflect and encourage as well. So I'm super excited to have you with us on this journey and for this episode today. And for all of our listeners, what we want to be able to focus on today is learning at work. We spent a lot of time, Mel and I both, about thinking and researching and observing teams about how do we help people learn on the job? What does that look like, feel like, sound like? How do we get that change in behavior over time? And so there's lots of ways we could look at learning. And today, Mel, I'd love to have you share some ideas about what do you think the role of learning is. So how do we help organizations understand how critical this is? So helping people learn better on the job, and why is this important in organizations today?
Yeah, that'd be a great place for us to start is just the why. Why is it
Yeah.
important? And I think that we can see just in the past year that there's a lot of a change that happens that's unexpected and unpredicted, and that goes along with the change that you can kind of already predict. And so, from a learning point of view, increasingly the technology is changing really fast that people are interacting with and needing to deal with. And the amount of knowledge that we have, we know, is increasing an amazing rate. And so, just to be able to learn something and think, okay, my learning is done because I have a good grasp of what I need to know right now, you're just going to drift further and further behind unless it's continually and ongoing. So, I think part of the why is the speed of change in terms of technology and knowledge, and from an organizational point of view, also the change in people. And so, unlike some previous generations where there was longer tenure that people had in organizations, people are changing jobs more often and more frequently. And so, as those people change those positions, then they take that knowledge, that institutional knowledge and expertise they have with them, and someone else has to come in and assume that role. And so, as people are changing, technology is changing. I think it's really valuable to have people able to be have those skills so that they can learn how to learn and to be self motivated to figure out what do I need to know, how do I ask the right questions to get that information, and who do I need to know. And so I think those are some really important reasons for us to spend some time thinking about learning and how we create a culture of learning in organizations.
So when we look at organizations today and that rate and pace of change, I love your highlight of that, and how we continue to respond, right? That skill set of knowing how to learn is something that I think all of our listeners can continue to hold on to with how do we continue to push ourselves in that. So one of our commitments on this podcast has been not only to set the stage. So to your point just now, the why, what, why is this important for organizations to not only survive but thrive, and for teams to be successful, and for individuals to bring their best work to the table. It's also then the practical part of this. And Mel, you and I have done some work and some conversation around what does that actually take then in our organizations to create the space for people to learn, to bring them in, to help them succeed, and what that looks like. And I just made a note of the comment you said of don't drift, right? Of this is an active process that for us to really get long-term change in behavior in ourselves, right? We've got to do more than drift. We've got to be actively engaged in this. So I would love to hear some of your ideas, what you've been thinking about and researching when it comes to helping people learn. What does it take? What are some of the lessons learned or advice you would give?
So I think in terms of kind of approaching that, there's a variety of ways, obviously, that you could kind of tackle the problem, so to speak. There's a number of different things that we routinely see as we're working with organizations and looking at the literature in terms of some best practices or some common takeaways that we have after working with people trying to help them develop their skills, develop their knowledge, and be successful. Ultimately, that's really important to me is helping people to achieve their potential, be successful in the workplace, and then successful people creating a successful organization that can take care of the needs and problems of others. And so, part of that needs to start with the what do our people need to know in the organization. So the what may be technical knowledge. So certainly there is some knowledge that you need for role specific technical knowledge. Another aspect of knowledge that sometimes gets overlooked when we think about from a learning perspective is the knowledge about the culture and values. And so not just teaching people the things they need to know how to do their job, but helping them understand the process or the way that you want them to be interacting with each other, interacting with customers, and accomplishing the things that are set before them. And so, in terms of knowledge, we have process knowledge, we have general knowledge about the organization and the values and what's important, and then there are the skills that need to be developed. And so, being able to bring people in who have those skills sometimes is a luxury for some organization these days. We need to find people who have some natural aptitude and interest, and then develop those skills with them on the job. So the what would be one of the things to think about is what do we need to have at the end result for them? And then once we know what we need to have, then we can get to the question of how. So, how do we go about structuring the learning experience for our employees? And so, a number of different things are relevant here. One is just the communication. How do we communicate not only the importance of learning, but the delivery and the access to the learning materials that they need to have? And so, as we both have seen, there's a kind of a tendency towards those face-to-face sessions, and we both enjoy teaching in those greatly,
I
and
do. Yeah.
look forward to when that becomes the norm again. But we saw with COVID that there became an increase willingness to try out some technology based instruction from some organizations that would have been otherwise very hesitant to adopt or innovate quite that soon. And so, being open to the value of new ways of doing things and delivery modes. So, not being locked into a specific mode of delivery, but trying to figure out what's the best mode for our people at this particular point in time, looking at expense and availability. That may also lead into some of the trends we see in terms of micro learning, where we have very small learning segments available for people, oftentimes on demand. That might be video based or written documents and those sorts of things. Also related to the how, I think, is building in some feedback mechanisms. So being able to observe or hear from the people that you're providing instruction to identify, are they understanding the message the same way that you're trying to deliver it, and also getting feedback in terms of, is this meeting what they feel that they need, to identify some of those gaps and make sure that those get addressed. And then giving people the opportunity to apply what it is that you're trying to teach them. There's a great value in not just hearing something, but being able to apply it. I know in the classroom, I'm always looking for ways to try and create some situation where the students can can apply things to their personal life if they're not able to apply it in their business or professional life right away.
Mm-hmm.
But in organizations, having that context so that they can put into action what they just learned about in the classroom or by watching a video helps them own it and helps it to be recalled and remembered later on. So that's kind of the what and the how. The other two that I wanted to kind of transition to would be the why. So I mentioned the importance of like hearing from the people that you're trying to train or communicate some information to, and that why is not just an afterthought. This is why we're doing this, but I think the why can really help frame the whole learning process. And so people get more engaged with material when they're able to see the relevance for them. And so, if there's something that you don't understand why someone's telling it to you, many of us have had that experience where someone's talking, it doesn't seem relevant. We're not fully processing or engaging in them. Our mind might be wandering on something else. Well, the same thing happens when we're trying to create education and learning opportunities in organizations. If we can help people at the beginning to see why it's relevant to their benefit, to be able to do their job better or easier, how is it relevant to helping fulfill the needs of the organization? How can this help you take care of your customers, your clients better? Understanding those whys can really increase engagement in the process and also kind of change the tone or the attitude that people may have towards learning. Because as much as we like learning and sitting in classrooms and asking questions,
It
that
is
is
our
not the
thing.
same for everybody,
Yeah, it's not
right?
everybody's thing.
No.
Yeah,
And so some people, when it's like, oh, I have a training to go to, right? It's like I have
there
to
we
go to
go.
it. And
Uh-huh.
so the relevance can help so that, oh, I get to go have this opportunity that can maybe better myself, put me on a higher career path, or just make my life easier. And so understanding the why when we're setting up organizational learning, I think is an important thing as well. You want me to go to the when
Yeah,
now, or
hit
yeah,
the
okay.
win, and then we're going to do a little bit of recap on this. I have a few questions. Sure.
Sounds great. So in terms of the when, uh, I I think learning and training. Sometimes we think about training as sessions, or they're like these episodes or things that you go to for a few hours, or a conference or a workshop that you go to for a day or a weekend. But in terms of really effective learning, I think we need to think of something that's ongoing and a continual process as opposed to an event, and also. Trying to think about the person who's making use of this information and what's the optimal time for them to get the information. So, from a learning development point of view, we have lots of things that we want people to know, and we think everything's important for them to know. But how do we space that out so that they're getting the key information at the best time that they're going to be able to see how it's relevant? And so many times, some of you have maybe experienced you go to a new employee orientation and you have days and days of information, but you don't have the context. You don't know how this is going to be used by you or what even some of the things that are being talked about. So spacing out some of those learning opportunities and creating refresher opportunities or some recharge opportunities, I think can be really helpful. Not from just from a motivation, but getting the application in terms of being able to see increase in performance. Because from an organizational effectiveness point of view, we like to see increases in performance. And from a personal point of view, we like to feel that we're competent and capable of doing our job well. And so when learning can help with that, that's all the more in terms of being able to help people to thrive in the workplace where they're at.
Mhm. Oh, so many good things there that let's hit a couple of those highlights for our listeners today.
Sure.
And so when you talk about the what, right? What do people need to know? I think it's a possible takeaway for anyone listening into this episode to say, okay, what do I need to learn, or what do I need my team to know? So that's going to look different at day 1 versus year 7 versus year 20. So just being able to do a check-in to the how, right? You mentioned the processes they need to know, that what do they need to know in general, how does this tie to culture and value, and as well as those skills. So we always want to think about learning happening at multiple levels. What do they need to know, And what's the best way for them to get that information, which is your why or your how, right? That how we get to people. I love the transition that's happened this past year of, to your point of, we've learned how to try out some new stuff, right? We're starting to learn the value of different modes of learning. And to your point on feedback mechanisms, how is it working? What's going to work for one person may not work for another. Yeah. So the what and the how, your examples with those that just continue to, I think, ring so true, because people are busy, right? We've got limited time, we've got limited resources and organizations. And if we could be a little bit more intentional about what do they need to know and what's the best way, what's the how, what's the best way for them to learn this? Yeah. When I think about that why, right? And you captured that so well of, it's not an afterthought, that it really is so relevant. We process it differently when we know the why behind it. And I think, Mel, you and I've seen over these last years more attention to the why. Would you agree that there's been more attention paid to that these last years?
Yeah, I think so. And part of it is, I don't know exactly the reason for it. I know sometimes when we're trying to figure out how do we best use our financial resources, understanding from a investment point of view, why would we want to choose to invest in this particular training opportunity as compared to another one? That can help us as trainers and learning leaders in the workplace to be able to figure out how do we demonstrate the value of helping our people to learn and become better equipped, especially in terms of like a leadership role.
Yeah. Which, I think that timing becomes really important. And to your comment for today, as we look at the what and the how and the why, is the when. And that learning happens all the time when we take the moment to be present and to really reflect on what is happening. How can I learn from this? How can I apply this? And we've got so many more ways to do this that I also think sometimes it's a little overwhelming, right? You can pull up information at a moment, you can watch something, you can listen to something, so many more opportunities. But I loved the comment about what's that optimal time, because I do think that there is, certainly amongst all of the change that's happening right now, not everybody is ready to learn at every moment. And just being open to that and ready for that, but also recognizing when is not the time to roll something out or to execute that change in something else we now need to learn. Yeah. Mel, any other thoughts as we kind of look at all of this in terms of what the future of this looks like?
As we're kind of looking ahead, I mean, we see that obviously technology and its role in learning is certainly going to continue to look quite different 3 or 5 years from now. But one of the things that maybe doesn't change as much, but doesn't get talked about as much, is the need and the value of relationship development in the organization. And so, being able to develop those relationships so that people are comfortable asking one another for the things that they don't know, and making it safe to ask those kind of questions, can I think help people to be more effective, and to not feel like they have to know. Sometimes you don't need to know everything yourself. You just need to know, who do I ask that can give me that right answer. And so those relationships, I think, continually need to be developed, no matter how the technology looks.
Nice. So if we think today for everybody listening in, and I know every time I think about this, as I hear you speak, Mel, it's always something we can take away. So for today, we're looking at the what, the how, the why, the when, and then to that last point about the future of this. It's about building those strong relationships so that we know, right? We're not in this alone. We're going to need each other to continue to navigate this relentless pace of change. And those relationships can support us in learning, can encourage us to learn, can provide information and insight as we take those next steps forward. Well, Mal, I'm grateful for what you shared, for all of those tuning in. And why don't we go ahead and move to our closing feature of this podcast, and for many podcasts has been a lightning round. And I always ask anyone who joins us as a co host to respond to a word. And in our household growing up, Scrabble was an Olympic sport. It is something that I have come to appreciate about language and about expression over time. And I love words. So, Mel, your word is adaptable. Tell us when you hear the word adaptable, what comes to mind?
So I will play along, even though I do not like the game Scrabble. So
That's okay. Wasn't a requirement for us to work together.
okay, that's good. So adaptable. Adaptable, I think, is one of the things that we have to have in this day and age. And so, if COVID revealed something from a process point of view to me as a teacher, it was the need to be able to find different ways to make use of my strengths to try and communicate information to my students. And so to be able to adapt, it took some doing, because some of the interactions and the group activities and the interpersonal dynamics that I really value and think help make me a really good instructor, all of a sudden weren't available in the same way that they had been. So I had to figure out, how do I accomplish the same outcome when I can't use my go-to tools and techniques, and to be able to figure out, well, what can I do that can still allow me to get there. So just being able to adapt to technology, to trying different things, and to also just being able to show myself and others around me the grace when the adaptation doesn't work out quite right. Because if we're going to try to adapt, it means along the way we're probably going to fail at some things, or some things aren't going to live up to the way that the standard that it used to have been. And so being able to operate in some grace during that time. So
Oh,
that's
so
adaptable
important.
to me.
I love it. And my hope coming out of lessons learned for, in many ways, 2020, 2021, as we embrace adaptability, is that space and grace, right? To let people learn safely, that we're all going to continue to make mistakes, but that adaptability to learn from those moments is so important. So Mel is one who just continues to inspire my reading, my book list. Thanks to Mel over the years, there has been endless supply of, oh, I want to know more about that. So, Mel, what are you reading now or next? What could you share with us?
Yeah, so I am at a interesting point for me, in terms of, as you mentioned, I always have leadership books that I'm reading, or kind of in the pipeline, so to speak. Leadership and business is kind of the books that I go to. I'm trying something a little different here, and I'm reading some history and some biographies to kind of look at leadership from a different perspective, in terms of from the standard leadership book. So what I just finished reading a couple days ago was a 100-year history of a English soccer club. And one of the things that, as I was reading through, is I'm always looking for ways to connect what I'm learning about or reading about with new things that I encounter. And so it was really neat. I didn't intend to be looking for leadership lessons. I was just looking for history about the soccer club. But as I was going through, I'm learning about the different managers throughout the 100 years, and the approaches that they used, and how they tried to develop culture, and what things were successful and what things weren't successful. And so it's not intended to be a leadership book, but because of my
I
filter,
love
it
it.
became a leadership book.
Yeah.
So that's what I just
Yeah.
got done reading. And so then from that, there was one particular manager who I wanted to learn more about his approach. So just getting started into to his biography. So in other words, just looking for something to freshen up the standard leadership books that I have been using.
I love it. And, just being open to that of, I went in with this idea and look at the other ways this applies. And it's one of the things that I just appreciate about your insight in things of how you help make those connections. Okay. So one of the things that that has been very important to me over the years is laughter and humor. So Mel, I promise not to ask you this every time, but I would love to know what makes you laugh, what just gives you joy.
Well, I don't know that it gives me joy. So making me
Oh,
laugh
okay, okay,
might be
okay.
separate from gives me joy in this particular case.
Okay.
So one of the things that makes me laugh is related to technology. We've talked about technology some,
Uh,
in that
yes.
you get prepared, you test something out, it seems to be all working good, and then you go and you get in front of the class, whether it's of students or at employees or wherever it is, and then things just don't work quite the way that you planned. And so you have the choice: do you laugh at yourself, or do you get all worked up about it? And so I find myself laughing at times because what else are you going to do? And so
That's it. That's
the
it.
technology
Yeah.
bumps along the road.
Oh, so much of that in these months and this past year. And I'm so glad you shared that because, there is such just a neat moment for all of us in that to go, yep, that happened. And to find the laughter. Okay, maybe not the joy to your part on that since I changed up the question on you. But the laughter in that, the humor in that to go to not take ourselves so seriously and to really focus on. And that's really my hope for all of us is to focus on what matters most in that moment. And a little laughter is good, but really at the end of the day, how do we continue to take care of people? Oh, Mel, thank you for, I know, jumping on this journey with me and both of us stretching out of our own comfort zones to hopefully share some ideas that will be helpful for our listeners. So thank you, Mel. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to be part of this.
All right. To everybody listening, we are grateful for you. So please stay tuned, check out our future episodes. And if there's any way that we can support and encourage you on this journey of learning, please feel free to reach out. These podcasts will continue to be available at workplacechameleon.com. You can find more about our team at pearmangroup.com. And we will talk again soon. Take care, everyone. Be well.